In Central Oregon, child abuse is very prevalent. Uh, here in Redmond, we're able to have one detective who does just child abuse. That includes physical abuse and sex crimes. And we could easily handle 2 detectives just taking that caseload.
I think that people need to know that child abuse is far more prevalent than we think. It's far more prevalent than we want to think. And I think it's far more damaging than people realize, especially if someone's never experienced it. Because most of the damage happens on the inside, not on the outside. I don't remember exactly when, and honestly, I don't remember exactly how, but he showed me my first pornographic magazine. And he started to explain about what the people were doing and that it was okay. And he began by just showing me magazines. And then he tried to get me to do some of the things that were in the magazines. He paid me money. He said it was okay. I trusted him. And although I knew there was something in me that said this isn't right, this was this person who'd built a great friendship with me. And I've probably been, at 6 years old, this 17-year-old was probably my best friend. It's amazing that although it was 30 years ago that this happened to me over the course of a year, my abuse went on for a year, that it still impacts me in some ways today, in ways that I would have never known or expected. I say secrets make you sick because when you're holding on to a secret that you don't want anybody to know about, you have to be aware of everything that's going on all the time. Your mind is always running to make sure that they never get to see that.
When an adult holds these stories in for decades, these stories of trauma, of abuse, it's a very common thing for them to hold it in. They often try to deny that anything ever happened or just want it to go away. And so if you don't talk about it, then maybe it'll just go away and maybe it didn't really happen.
The victim knows the abuser in a lot of cases. The abuser can be a close family friend, it can be a family member, it can also be somebody that they have a lot of trust in, such as a clergyman. And in this case, they open up their hearts to the clergyman and they take advantage of that.
When I got into high school youth group, there had been a very popular minister that had been hired by the church. He made sexual advances on me in his office in the church. And everything changed after that. Sitting in your minister's office and he gets up and goes and locks the doors, and you're 15 years old, you don't know what's going to happen. And it's scary, and then you got to be tough. You got to pretend it doesn't happen. I lived with my secret hidden behind my walls, telling nobody until 3 years ago when I was 56 years old.
A lot of times they blame themselves to wonder, why didn't I say anything? What did I do? Why me? And so to have to see yourself as a victim and not realizing that as a child you did what you had to do to survive. You did the best with what you could do at the time.
It put walls around me and separated me from everybody else. It separated me from my family. It separated me from other kids. In protecting that secret that was over here, it put distance between me and everyone else in my life.
In retrospect, I wish my mom and dad would have noticed maybe what was going on as I look back. But as a dad now, I think they were really young parents doing the best they could with what they had. And they just didn't have a clue to know how to ask the question. But if they would have asked the question, it would have saved a lot of pain. I think I would have started the healing process so much sooner. But for me, I carried it around for 19 years of a secret.
Sex abuse of children, of minors, never goes away. It is something that stays with you for life. It changes you. It robs you of your soul.
There are other Jeremys and Randys out there, people and adults who have held in their abuse for their whole lives. And what I would say to them is find somebody to talk with about it. You shouldn't be ashamed. It wasn't your fault. And your voice can help end the silence and can help prevent further generations of abuse. This is something that needs to be talked about in order to prevent it in the long run.
If it can be known that something's happened, if they can get into counseling when they're young and begin to process it and deal with it, that you do shine a light on it, and it becomes hopefully something that doesn't create shame for their entire life. I'm the example of what you don't want.
Kids are just carrying around so much more hurt and pain than we realize. You know, and they're ready for people to have their arms open to say, I love you, let's walk through this together.
I think that the wall of silence that surrounds these victims is what I hear most from kids and from adults. They don't talk because they're afraid they're the only ones. They don't talk out of fear or shame. And so to see them walk through these doors and to sit in a room with somebody that works here or volunteer from here, and to be able to feel acceptance and that they're not judged and that it's okay to talk about anything, is a really powerful thing, not only for them, but for our staff as well.
When the problem's not addressed, when it's not reported, when parents question their children and don't believe their children when their kids come forward and tell them something, you're just increasing the darkness and you're increasing the shame.
I would say to moms too, don't assume that your kid is going to bring this up just because you've talked about it. I would say be sure to ask them the question very clearly and very point blank. You know, has anyone ever touched you ever? You know, don't assume because it's been talked about that it's going to be brought up.
The Kid Center is able to provide counseling and therapy to children who have been sexually and physically abused. And this is a great resource for these children to be able to cope with what's happened with them in the past so that they can have a successful future.
The Kid Center can offer victims of abuse a safe place to talk about what's happened to them. There's no judgment. There's no preconceived notions that they're going to fail or succeed. There's a lot of support here. Kid Center can also offer therapy and education to help prevent this. Intervention. They can get family support. They can get group work. There's just an array of support that happens right when you walk through these doors of Kid Center.